Howdy, folks, and welcome to Moose Podcast 286. Hope you had a really fine week. I know I did. Been busy. Yeah, I've actually, kind of weird for me, I was out looking for flowers to photograph. Oh, yeah, spring is here. I hope you're out there enjoying it. We have nesting birds. In fact, all our boxes are actually got somebody in them, which is a first in my lifetime. It's going to be exciting. Hope you're out there. And I do appreciate you when you come in, taking a little bit of time and listen to the podcast. It means a great deal to me. So thank you for your support and keep on spreading the word. Also want to thank my good friend at Bedford Camera, bedfords.com. I know some of you have already reached out to them and put your name on the waiting list for the highly anticipated announced Nikon Z800 f6.3. No, I've not shot with it. I've not seen it. Do not have a plan to buy it at this time, but you know, I've said that before about lenses and now I've got them. So, Bedford's is the place. Hey, they also got the PhotoCon coming up. They got Photo Expo. They got the Z5 in stock and at $100 deduction sale. Bedford Camera, they are the folks with gear, great service, advice. Let them know you heard about them here on the podcast. Bedfords.com. Thank you guys for your continuing support of the Moose Podcast. Let's get right into this week's episode number 286. Without rules, there's anarchy. Probably wondering what brought this on. Was it the mess over in Ukraine? Was it the slap, as they're calling it? Yeah, those things, of course, do bring a lot of things to my mind. That's why I like to go out with my camera, so I forget those things. Nope. I had some interesting emails this week, truly interesting ones, that, well, I could go on for probably a good hour or more today and not cover everything that those emails covered. But without rules, there's anarchy. This past week, the Kelby One folks put on this marvelous landscape conference 2022. And I was very honored and humbled to be asked to do it again. Had a couple classes. And some of the questions came from that and basically, photography. Photographers seem to need, for lack of better terms, guidance when it comes to putting what they see in the viewfinder and organizing in such a way they feel tells their story. So there's my first issue. If you don't know in your mind and your heart how to organize the elements, how can somebody else help you? Well, then we turn to rules. There's rules of composition, like a rule of thirds, a rule of space, things like that, formal, informal balance, what's also called physical and visual balance in a photograph. Those are really touted as the way that you should take your photograph. But here's my question that I asked a number of those emailers this past week, and I didn't get any response that I expected. But I asked them point blank, do you take your photograph to conform to one of those rules that you're being told? Or do you find that rule that applies to the photograph after you've taken it? Because to me, if you're doing either one, how are you telling your visual story of whatever you're photographing? Now, I understand that in English, when it comes to writing, there are rules. I understand that. Doesn't mean I apply them, and that's partly because I'm just too lazy to commit them to memory. Yet, I got 29 books out there. Yeah, someone cleaned up a lot of the English. God bless those people. But back to photography. When you're out shooting, it's the first thing that comes to your mind is, wow, that is a gorgeous landscape. Or, wow, the golden ratio just fits this perfectly. What goes through your mind? It's a valid question, I think, especially considering the questions that came in. I know a number of folks who, God bless them, seem to search everything that they are experiencing for leading lines. Oh, I got leading lines. A leading line leads me into this. Leading line leads into that. But because you have leading lines, do you have a photograph? If you put something using the rule of thirds in one of those four corners, do you have a photograph? If you use a strong diagonal, is that in itself a photograph worth sharing and one that depicts and tells a story you want of that subject? Now, from the responses I got from people when I talked to them, a couple via Zoom and a couple via email, the looks on the face and the unanswered emails to those questions kind of led me to think that maybe I was pushing on a button that they hadn't pushed themselves. They hadn't actually came down and look at what is the purpose of the photograph. Now, not that every photograph has to have a purpose, don't get me wrong. And don't take any of this as, carved in cement. And as you know, if you listen to the podcast, I want you to think about the photograph you're taking more than about thinking about what Moose says or the rules of thirds says or something you've read or heard says. I want you listening to yourself. That's the bottom line point here, right? Listening to your own decision process that comes down to when you go clicking the camera. Just because, for example, you might read that I'm doing this, that, and the other doesn't mean you should instantly grab your camera and do this, that, and the other. Having the ability of taking a few pictures over the years, I have weeded through a lot of these things that perhaps you're just now confronting for the first time. And experience is very important in this photographic process. So when you start using these rules as if they are carved in stone, does that bring peace and organization to your photograph? Or does it bring anarchy? Without rules, there's anarchy. We know that as a society and in civilization. Is that necessarily true in art and photography? And in art and photography, is anarchy a good or a bad thing? Long time ago, there was an exhibit put out by Robert Bateman, a really marvelous artist, and the exhibit came out kind of on the heels of this vast discussion going around that when you photograph a critter, it needs to always be looking into the photograph. Every one of Mr. Bateman's fantastic paintings, the critter was looking outside, not but looking out of the photograph. And I only know this because I've taken photographs of critters and many things throughout my entire career where the critter is not looking into, but looking out of the photograph. And there's other elements in the frame supporting that. Now, the rule, okay, I was not following it, though it wasn't a rule that I had made. And there was anarchy because I had broken that unstated rule. Is that good or bad? So in other words, just because there is a lot of rules put out there by those in the know and those who don't know anything, if you follow them or not, is that good or bad? or not. Right? It is your photograph. It is your story. You were there. We were not. We're depending on you to bring it back and telling it to us in the way that you want to tell that photograph. Now, in this process, there's so much that could go on and not go on. Uh, I was looking at this one website, and 8 golden rules for perfect product photography composition. And I went and read it and looked at it, and I was like, wow. First of all, the photographs don't really support what they're saying. That's my first thing. And then I'm going to myself, wow, this is totally different than what I was taught back in the late 70s, early 80s about advertising photography, because that was my major in school. And then I began to wonder if, well, am I just an old fart still and things have changed and I've not moved on with that change? Or is some of the old stuff still valid today? I mean, without rules, there's anarchy. So, where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line in your photography? These rules of composition. Have you ever typed in the word rules of composition and Googled it to see if the rules came up? When I was in high school, my photo teacher, and I've talked about Richard Traub many times, a very brilliant and wise person, very brilliant and wise person. He had 12 rules of composition. And I can't find for the life of me that notebook without those 12 rules of composition that he said that are only a starting point and that are there strictly when you fall back because you have nothing else. Can't find those 12. And I have searched books and the web. And then I started thinking to myself, without rules, there's anarchy. So you start out with what? You start out with an f-stop and shutter speed. And one of the first rules you think about is, the rule of exposure. Just think about how many rules of exposure you've probably heard. Even if you just started out, you just started reading on the web. Think about all the rules for exposure. Wow. And then you hear about the rules about perhaps camera brands or camera bodies or camera lenses or specific focal lengths. And pretty soon you could say, wow, yeah, photography fits into that. Without rules, there's anarchy because look at all the rules that are there. And then you progress and start listening and looking at photographers whose photographs perhaps you truly enjoy. And in that process, you go, wow, they're not talking about rule of thirds. They're not saying that this was in that place or that place. They're talking about that thing called light. Let's look up the rules of light. Boy, that's a lot of physics. Oh, there's not really any rules about light, is there? There's a bunch of gobbledygook about emotions and color and color psychology. That's out there. Stuff about color contrast, but there's no rules about light. Okay, let's look about the rules of the mind's eye. Rules of the mind's eye. Oh, there's wow, Google, you let me down. Rules of the mind's eye. You come up with some basics here. Oh, under that thing called psychology. Oh, God darn it, I gotta think again. That means I have to connect the heart to the head. Rules of thirds. Yeah, there's no heart and head in that one. That's just there. Without rules, there's anarchy. I'm just suggesting, and I want to put out with the conversations I had, that perhaps if you are relying on, and you're taking a photograph to fill that rule of whatever you think, that rule of composition, or after you've taken the photograph, you're trying to find that rule of composition to justify what you did, that you consider a couple things. First, perhaps your photograph doesn't need any of those rules. Perhaps your photograph is strong enough on all the merits in which you have already put into it from your heart and from being there and your storytelling and your experience as a person, experiencing these things in life. Perhaps, you don't need to take those rules of composition and apply them every time you put the camera to your eye, maybe you should just have fun. Maybe just have fun. And in that process, bring back all that fun you had at that time and encapsulate it in one photograph. And when you look at your photographs that are those memories, sometimes there's stories that only you get. When you look at those photographs those special moments, and you know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about just sunrise or sunsets. There's so many special memories that we capture with our camera on a continual basis. How many of those does the rule of any composition even flicker in your subconscious, let alone consciously? I mean, you look at those photographs you really love. Do you go, well, darn, I nailed that rule of thirds this time? Or you just say, wow, that was a magical moment. And I'm glad I got a photograph so I can remember it. What is more important to you? So, yeah, without rules, there's anarchy. But I don't think that necessarily applies to the creative world of art and photography or writing or many other things when we're expressing ourselves. That's to do with society in it, and for there it's very, very pertinent. But for the rest of the stuff, yeah, maybe not so much. You folks have a great week. And remember to go out and make every click your story.